Welcome to the Happy Doc, the voice of fulfilled physicians. This show is about bringing inspirational, creative, successful, and happy health professionals to you. Get ready to learn how you can be a happy doctor too. Hello everyone, this is Dr. Taylor Brana, and this is another episode of the Happy Doc. I'm extremely excited for our next guest, and this is going to be Ben Smith. Ben Smith has this awesome website, bensmith.tv. And just to preface this conversation, I actually found out about Ben through podcasting. I was searching for people who are knowledgeable about the voice space, specifically things such as Alexa, Google Home, and voice is something I'm extremely interested in. Neil on our team is also extremely interested in it. And we found out about Ben. We listened to his podcast, absolutely loved it. It's the Voice Entrepreneur. And I want Ben to say hello, and we'll start with some questions. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing well today, Taylor. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. And so, Ben, before we kind of begin talking about voice and you know that whole topic, I would love our listeners to get to know a little bit about you. So, can you give us a little bit of your professional background?
Sure. So my background, I'll try to be brief. Basically, I was an early Google employee, around 1,000 employees at Google way back in 2003, and got to ride on that spaceship called Google for quite a long time. When video happened to the internet in roughly 2005 or so, Google looked around, tried to figure out who they had that knew video. And I was pretty entrepreneurial. I had started a video production company in Asia before I was at Google. And so it was me and several other people. We formed Google Video. And then very quickly, I was part of the team that acquired YouTube in its very, very early days. And then was one of the very, very first business people at YouTube, focused on how was YouTube ever going to make money. And at the time, that just seemed crazy. Most people felt like it was farting dogs on fire on skateboards. And my job was really to figure out, how was this thing going to make money? How was the world of video going to look? I worked with a lot of the studios and networks and all the big players in the video space to try to create the rules and how it was. And then YouTube sent me down to Los Angeles. I was the first YouTube employee to be stationed in Los Angeles way back in late 2008. And then I left. I started a couple of companies, sold a couple of companies. And then over the last 3 or 4 years, I've been working. I run my own consulting company. I invest. I incubate companies. And about a year ago, I started looking at the voice space, and it looked so much like video. It looked exactly like 2005 to me all over again. Mm-hmm. And for me, that meant that I just needed to get involved in the space. So I started a podcast called Voice Entrepreneur, where we started talking about voice. And, I certainly wasn't qualified. I didn't know anything about it, but I just wanted to get in, experience it, and really try to bring a marketing and an entrepreneurial voice to the space. And that's what I'm doing today.
I love it. And I'm really excited because often I'm bringing on guests here who are physicians, but you're a true, born and bred entrepreneur. You've been involved with a lot of companies, a lot of groups, big names, obviously Google and YouTube. And obviously you said you mentioned the companies you built as well. So you've been doing this for a while, and now voice seems like a pretty big thing. What makes you feel like this is just as big as, for example, the .com boom, or what's happening with video? What's going on with voice that makes you have a sense that this might be a big thing?
Yeah, I heard a couple of statistics, Taylor, in the beginning of the year, around January of 2018, that just made my head pop. And the first one was, I heard at a conference, and I haven't seen it online, but I heard it at the conference. So it may not be exactly true, but it still got me involved in the game. And the first was that 90% of consumed content by the year 2020, estimated by Google, is that 90% of consumed content will either be audio or video. That means
Wow.
that nobody will be reading. Right?
Yeah.
No one's reading anymore. And so
Yeah.
that really had an impact on me. And then the second one is already Google in 2018, today, at least 1 out of 4 searches on Google in mobile is voice activated. And
Wow.
that's today.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just a mind-blowing statistic to me. It
Yeah.
reminds me when I was at YouTube, roughly 2008, we looked and there were roughly 30% of our views were happening via mobile at YouTube, and we didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what to make of it. We actually thought it might be a bad idea. We were like, how do we stop this? How do we stop people watching YouTube on mobile? Because it's a tiny screen, it's not a great experience. But what we saw was that's what people wanted. And when you see the activity and you see user activity happening naturally, even when a technology is not mature, that means something. So when I heard that statistic, I said, my God, I've got to get into voice. This is it. This is the next big wave.
Yeah. I love that. So tell us a little bit about Voice Entrepreneur. What are some of the things you discuss on your podcast?
Sure. So for me, when I started getting involved in the space, when I had that moment, I started looking around saying, all right, who should I know? Who's having the best conversations? Where is this happening? Who's thinking about the business? Who's thinking about monetization? And I frankly went out there and I didn't see anybody having the conversation I wanted to have. I saw a lot of people talk about the programming elements, the technical elements of voice and how to engineer. I saw some people talking about the future of voice and talking about how, sort of like a Jetson sort of approach to it. But I wasn't really interested in talking about the future, and I'm not technical. What I wanted to talk was the business of voice, and it just wasn't there. So I needed to start it myself. So that's why I started Voice Entrepreneur. Voice Entrepreneur is supposed to be the business side of voice. It's supposed to be 50% voice, 50% entrepreneur. And it was important to me to create a community and a space where people who are like-minded could come and talk about turning this into a business. So I started the podcast. We have a thriving Facebook group. We have around 2,000 members in our Facebook group. It's very, very active. And we have, of course, Instagram, and we have a bunch of channels. But it's really, really cool how quickly a community has been created that of like-minded people that are ready to talk about this in the way that I just set out to talk about it. So I'm very happy about that.
I love that. I love that. And what gets me personally excited about voice, and something I bring up in the medical community a lot, is medicine tends to be very behind in terms of, number one, we're not entrepreneurially trained. We don't think in business terms. But medicine is at this kind of crossroads where a lot of doctors are very exhausted. They want a sense of freedom. People want to think about different ways of creating passive streams of income, for example, and have more control of their schedules. And I think voice, number one, is extremely useful on the individual level because you can, explore your creativity, expand your ability to create passive streams of income, for example. But number two, it can be really useful for medical knowledge, for example. So I'm really excited about the conversation here. When I have people listening, I want them to be inspired to think creatively how they could use voice. So what are some things that, what are some applications or what are some things that you get excited about when it comes to the voice space?
Yeah, look, I think that voice is transformational on so many different levels. But if we're talking about 2018, 2019, it's extremely early. And if it's extremely early, what we've seen be successful so far is straightforward information and giving information or recording information in new, novel ways that allow people. Everything is based of the last 20 years on the internet. Everything is built around creating less friction and making things easier for people. If a technology saves people time, it has always proven to be successful. And so I really love what's going on in so many different fields with voice where we're trying to figure out how to save time. So from a doctor perspective, I think this idea of recording information easy reference material information, all that stuff is where we're beginning. I think in a few years we'll get to the place where you can start to have real interesting conversations, perhaps even diagnoses, or I'm not familiar exactly with your lingo, but I
Sure.
think that it will be more of an actual relationship through voice. Today, I believe it's more informational, but it
Yep.
is transformational because it's saving people so much time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love
As a
that. And
whole, we're seeing a
mhm.
ton of interesting Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was saying we're seeing really interesting progress in the education space with voice. So, for instance, colleges and universities are openly embracing voice because they can get schedules. They can get when is the football game going to be? What day is spring break? Right? Easy information that everybody needs. It saves a ton of time because you don't have administrative people having to spend their time answering the same questions over and over again. Simple stuff. But guess what? It's helping people, and it's helping people when they need it most. So
Yeah.
that's what's working.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And I'm actually scrolling through your website right now as well as you're talking, and I love that, for people who haven't used these tools yet and they don't have really a sense of it, maybe you don't even own an Alexa or a Google Home, or you use Cortana and these tools, for example. They might not have any idea how it works. So, like on your page, for example, you have the resources and Alexa commands, and you can scroll through and see the simple things that this voice application can do. But just an implication to this, for example, is one idea that comes to mind is onboarding, and I think about this a lot. Like, you do the onboarding process for a lot of people. For example, you're bringing in a new employee, or you do the same process over and over again. But you could onboard someone, and using kind of like a quiz, an Alexa quiz, for example, you could have the device teach someone the process and then quiz them to see if they actually got it. That's just a simple idea that came to me, but there's so many possibilities for a voice application like this, and I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think routines, what you're describing to me sounds like a routine. We're finding that voice with routines and a process, it makes so much sense because it does speed things up. The trick with this is figuring out how voice can be more productive and just better to use than your mobile phone. It's pretty easy to whip your mobile phone out and answer a question. When is it easier to use voice? And the answer is oftentimes when you're busy, like if you're driving a car, washing the dishes, your hands are full. If you're a doctor and you have instruments in your hand, these are places where your voice can be so interesting. And then you combine that with the power of a routine and something you do over and over again, and it gets really, really interesting.
Hmm. Now, out of curiosity, do you know of specific routine form applications, or what people have done so far?
Well, like I said, in the school and education space, entering information about a student or about their interests, or before a class starts for the semester, inputting who they are, where they're from, how old they are, so that you can share information with the class or with the group on who these people are. We're seeing routines like that are really helpful for people in a broad sense.
Wow. I love that. So basically, like, someone could download the voice app, they could input their information using their voice, and then the hub, or let's say the teacher, is able to receive and collect that information and use it for statistics or whatever they want in classes.
Exactly.
Wow. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And that's such a simple use case, but there's just so many possibilities. Now, for someone who's listening this for the first time, they're like, okay, this is great. Like, it makes a lot of sense, but I'm not a programmer, right? So how do people jump into this or start to explore this further? What resources, what are some things that people use to get started?
Sure. I think you would be surprised, first of all, if you're new to the space, if you are new and you've never played with an Amazon Alexa before, first of all, they're very inexpensive. You can get one for around $30 today, and $30 gets you in the game. So that's the first thing. And then you might be surprised. Amazon recently published that there are over 50,000 unique, what they call voice skills for Alexa. And you can think of a skill in the same way that you think of an app for your cell phone. Skill is just the word that Amazon has invented for an app on their platform. So there are over 50,000 unique skills or apps for voice. That means there's almost an endless number of things you can do with an Amazon Alexa. So that's the first thing. I would suggest to people go out, get one of these things, play with it, and see what you find. That's number one. Number two, if you want to start participating and creating your own, you do not need programming experience. That's part of why there are over 50,000 skills worldwide now. And that is, there are platforms. One of my favorites is called Storyline. And Storyline is a free platform that allows you to program your own Alexa skill or app for free. No programming experience necessary. We've seen people create incredible skills through Storyline, actually win awards. They're some of the most successful Alexa skills on the platform, and they're all from people that have no experience at all. So if you're a doctor, if you're a student out there, and this sounds interesting, don't be intimidated. You don't need programming ability. All you need is an interest and a good idea, and you can build it right now. I actually built, when I first got in the space, I built my own voice skill called Secret Agent. And Secret Agent was simply supposed to be like a James Bond sort of game in voice. And I built it in about 15 minutes on my own, no ability. I learned how to use Storyline in about 3 minutes and did the rest in 12 minutes.
I love it.
And it's incredible what you can do today. So don't be intimidated. That's my advice to your audience. Amazing.
I love it. And it's good to know that there's a resource that you can start programming it right away. No, that's awesome. And there's so many uses for this in my mind, for medicine. And obviously, that's something that I want everyone to kind of listen into this and have their creativity go and play around with this. So I think that's extremely useful. So, Ben, as I look through, your page and everything and what you're doing on Voice Entrepreneur, you've developed a community around this. That's correct. You said, as you mentioned before, you have your community page.
Yeah, we have over 2,000 people in our Facebook group. Our Facebook group is called Voice Entrepreneur. You can search for it on Facebook. Just search Voice Entrepreneur. And we have active conversations every single day. We have passionate, the exact same way that you do, Taylor.
Yep.
They want to get more involved. There's so much news that comes out every day. So we're digesting news, talking about what's happening. Something new might come out from Amazon on a Tuesday, and by Thursday and Friday, members of our community are playing around with it and making it work. It's so cool. It is such a great time.
Yeah. And that's something else I want to, echo to everyone listening is this is a new, changing, constantly moving field. So it's a really exciting time to get into this playing field, which is still incredibly fresh. And I also know, and this is why it's exciting from a money-making standpoint. And I don't think you should initially go into thinking about just making money. You want to make a great skill that's user-friendly and has a great experience. But now they've added, you can do in-application purchasing. So you could have like a light version of the application. And you can also do subscription-based payments, and you can make money that way. Have you seen, Ben, have you found ways of monetizing, or are you still playing around with that process in your own experience?
Yeah, Taylor, for me, I think it is still pretty early. And we know that there are some companies making a little bit of money doing this. But I think right now, everyone's realizing that it's all about audience, and it's about creating a mass or going out there and getting users and then monetizing later. We saw the same thing in video, way back in 2005, 6, 7, which was people, of course, people want to make money, but they realized that the real game was acquiring audience. And that's the name of the game on the internet. That's the hard part. The hard part is going out and getting people to use your skill or your app. But once you have that, there are going to be lots and lots of ways to make money. So I'm worrying less about making money today, and I'll worry about it in a year or two with the stuff I'm doing. That said, I really believe that voice is, you know, one of the big reasons why I got in this space was that when I was at Google in 2003, what we saw was that there were generally 12 search results on a Google screen. On Google search results, there were 12 of them. And that's because you were on a laptop, and that's how many you saw. That was 2003. But when the mobile phone came out, 2008, 9, 10, all of a sudden the screen size shrank. And so only 3 search results fit on that screen. Yeah. And so competition for that inventory went up, right? The name of the game was getting on to be one of those 3 search results. So we went from 12 to 3. And now here in 2018, 19, all of a sudden it's going to be competition to become 1 search result. And that's the voice search result. So when you ask these devices for something, it has to return 1 answer. There's only room for 1 answer. Mm-hmm. So the competition for this inventory, in other words, is going to be so intense. Can you imagine when you ask one of these devices what the best family SUV for you is? Can you imagine how much Honda and Toyota and these other companies are going to be paying to be the company that gets returns on a voice search?
Right.
That's the name of the game, and people don't understand this. That's why right now people aren't worried about making money. They're worried about becoming that search result, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense, because like you said, like on a screen, you can see 3 physical results, but your voice application isn't going to spew out 10 things because your brain's not going to remember it, number one. And number two, it's just not user friendly. So yeah, that makes 100% sense. Now, as I'm hearing this, it just sounds to me like what you're saying is, number one, the first thing to do, I guess, from a kind of almost like a practice or way of getting into the space is, number one, yeah, you can make the skill, but you really do want to base it on community, having people be aware of what you're doing, see if they find it useful, and then maybe later down the line you add a few add-ons and additional things, and then it might be something to consider in terms of something like monetization. But really it's that community aspect and making sure that there's people that are actually utilizing the skill and find it useful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things I teach my audience is I really believe in a concept called audience first. And what audience first means is that you want to build an audience first and a product second. And it's really, really counterintuitive. Most people think of it like Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come. It's actually the opposite. You want them to come so then you can build it. Right. So I truly believe that the best entrepreneurs out there, they create an audience around an idea, a topic, right? Yeah. And for me, it was around voice. I don't have a product. I'm not making money, right? But I created this thriving community. I have thousands of people in this community in less than 6 months. And sure, there's 100 different ways I can make money from this community if I want to in the future. But right. I built the audience first. So I would encourage your audience, if they have an incredible idea for a skill or for an app or for something that can help the doctor community, go out and create a community around that idea. Create people that are passionate about what you're interested in building, learn from them, have them help you, inspire goodwill, and then go build it. First of all, you're going to be so much further along than everybody else because you have audience. But most importantly, you will have the best part about this is you're actually listening to other people, and that's what entrepreneurs do. They listen and then they build. They don't build and then listen.
Right.
Does that make sense as well?
Yeah, it does. 100%. Because
excellent.
Because you kind of need the road, like, so to speak, before your car can drive it, right? Like, your audience is your roadway. It's the path you take. That makes total sense. Now, as I'm scrolling through your page, something I'm seeing here is obviously you're a practitioner, and that's what I love, right? So I love people who not only do they speak about something, but they've actually built skills. So when I went on your page, I see that the Voice Entrepreneur is now the #1 rated skill on Alexa in the business and finance category. So, for example, if someone has an Alexa right now and they want to check out your application, what does it do for them?
Well, so that's simply what I do is I broadcast Voice Entrepreneur every single day on the Alexa. Think of it as a very short podcast. So they call it in the Alexa, Amazon Alexa world, they call it a flash briefing. And a flash briefing is simply just a very short podcast. But I broadcast every single day. I give people ideas, tips, tricks, opinions on how to entrepreneur, how to use voice, how to market, all of these ideas like audience first. And we've built a community around it. And I want people to be able to listen, whether they're on Amazon Alexa or they're on iTunes or anywhere they may be. And we've built a great community on Amazon. And that's pretty cool.
And how long, just for my users, how long is a flash briefing?
So flash briefings generally can be anywhere between 30 seconds to 5 minutes. The way they were created was that Amazon wanted to give news organizations a way to give a short bit of news. That's why they call it a flash briefing. So they wanted organizations like New York Times and I suppose Fox and other organizations the ability to broadcast a short bit of news on the Amazon Alexa. But entrepreneurs like me said, wait a minute, it shouldn't just be Fox News. It shouldn't just be New York Times. It shouldn't just be Wall Street Journal. It could be bloggers and vloggers and people like myself that give a quick daily dose of information. And so I became one of a handful of people out there that does a flash briefing to inspire people in the entrepreneur world once a day. And so that's what my flash briefing is all about.
No, I love that. And so first question that comes to mind is, how long did that take you to make a flash briefing? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, it's very, very simple. It's in some sense, it's as simple as just recording an MP3 file, just like you would with a podcast. There are a plethora of services out there where you just simply record your voice. And you can do this every iPhone. If you own an iPhone or an Android phone, every single one of them have a voice recorder. Simply record your voice. And then there are a multitude of services that can help you publish your little your voice MP3 file onto the Amazon Alexa. And now all of a sudden you have a flash briefing as well. It's that easy. And if, of course, if you need help with that, I have more information on bensmith.tv. But I really encourage people to go experiment. It's not very hard to get a flash briefing on Amazon, have people hear your voice all around the world.
Right.
I've been listened to, I think, in over 55 different countries now through Amazon alone. It's pretty amazing.
That's amazing. And the reason I bring it up is, first off, I knew it was actually fairly simple, but I wanted my users to hear that and my listeners to hear that because the flash briefing idea is such a simple topic, and I actually want to talk about this in terms of medicine for a second. If your hospital wants to give a little bit of an update, they can send out a 30-second, 1-minute flash briefing. Is there a notification system set up? Is there a way for the listeners to know that flash briefing has a new one populated, for example? Is that something embedded in the application?
It doesn't work exactly that way. It works more in the way that you tell Alexa, you say, hey, Alexa, brief me. And when you say brief me or give me the news, then it simply gives you the latest update from the news organizations you've chosen. Right. And so people get into a habit. It's funny, so many of my fans or the audience, they say that they listen to me in the morning when they're drinking their coffee while they're having breakfast. And then there's some people that say, hey, I listen to you while I'm in bed about to go to sleep at night. It's strange, but that's when people are listening. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's great because for me, like an easy use case, again, is maybe your hospital has an update or your team in the hospital has an update. And you could actually subscribe to a doctor that you find, entertaining or fascinating. There's just so many, there's just so many opportunities. So I just, your brain just goes a million miles if you open it up to the creative things you could do with this. And especially if you're a practice owner, there's so many possibilities. That's why I love this conversation.
Absolutely. I really think the sky is, it's so unlimited for your industry, Taylor. It blows my mind. We know that it's easy. Right now we see people and they're putting out, how to select supplements, for example. I know
Right.
that's not exactly what your industry does,
Right.
but there's so much information in your industry that needs to be given out and given out intelligently. And that's just the lowest level of this. And then I think there's just so many interesting communities within your world that need to go to Voice and find Voice as a way to enhance and create a better experience for the community.
Yeah.
So I love to think in terms of community. So I just really encourage you, whether you're a medical student, whether you're a doctor, a nurse, an administrative official. Right now, we are seeing a landslide of schools and universities that are figuring out this is the number one way to communicate with their constituents. If it's true for them, it must be true for you. And I would love to see someone like you, Taylor, and others take the lead in helping create this future.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ben. Absolutely a pleasure. I think at some point we're going to have to invite you back as we get more into Voice, and I'm sure my listeners are also going to have plenty of questions as well. I think that was a very good basic conversation for today. Now, Ben, what are some ways for our listeners to catch up with you? What are ways you'd like them to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm not too hard to find. My name is Ben Smith, and the brand is called Voice Entrepreneur. You can find us on iTunes as a podcast. You can join the Voice Entrepreneur group on Facebook, or if you want, you can just find me on Twitter and ask me a question at Benjamin Smith. So there you go.
Amazing. And I have to say, Ben, just again for my listeners, we reached out to him. He's extremely responsive. He'll send you a message right away. You truly are embodying what it means to create a community and an audience, and you were extremely accessible. So I love listening to your podcast. I think you give great content. And for my physician listeners who aren't immersed in entrepreneurship, I think you really do a great job explaining a lot of the concepts and the mindset and the behaviors that an entrepreneur takes. So I really enjoy it, and I think it's valuable content. So everyone listening, please check out Ben Smith and what he's doing. I really appreciate your time, Ben. It's been a true pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Taylor. I'm a big fan of yours now as well, and I've been listening every day now, and it's exciting, and I can't wait to see where it goes. It's going to be so exciting, man. I really do love it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Happy Doc podcast, the voice of fulfilled physicians. If you enjoyed the episode, please drop us a like, comment, and share. Share us through the social media channels we have on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The handle is at Happy Doc Podcast. That's at Happy Doc Podcast. You can find our website at www.thehappydoc.com. Again, thank you so much for listening to the Happy Doc, the voice of fulfilled physicians.